Hi, welcome to our latest episode of You Own It. And this month, we're going to talk a little bit about selling a home. We've already talked about the, buyers, if you're in a multiple offer situation, how to be aggressive, how to win. Last month, we talked a little bit about the buying process. This month, we're going to talk a little bit about the selling process and what home sellers should be considering or home sellers should understand about when they're going to be moving. So let's start talking about the steps to selling a home. And one of the first things that I always tell people they should consider doing is before, let's just say it came to mind, you're thinking about moving. It might be next year. It might be 6 months. It might be 4 months. You're going to move out of the area. The first thing you should always do before you do anything, before you take a step in the next step of actually going to buy something or looking where you're going, is you need to make a financial plan. Step number one always should be figuring out about where your home is, what your home is worth. And how you do that is you do what's called a market evaluation. You should have a real estate professional in and have them look at your house, and bring you what they call comparable properties, which would show you what the house is worth. Now, one of the things I always try to stress to people is pricing a home is a bit of a collaborative process. I may come in your house and I'm an expert in the market, and I've seen most of the houses that I would bring to somebody often with a comparable, but that doesn't mean the final pricing decision is up to me. You as a seller and your agent should walk through the process together by looking at the comparables and kind of doing what I always say is taking a piece of paper and saying, if my house, I'm comparing my house to others on the market today, is it better? If I was a buyer, is my house better or worse? Is it better or worse? Is it better or worse? Then you're looking at what's pending. Those are houses that were on the market and sold. Is my house better or worse? Better or worse? Better or worse? Then you look at those contracts that are closed, meaning what did they list for? What did they sell for? And you need to go through that process. Is my house better or worse? Better or worse? Better or worse? When you do that, a couple things are going to become very apparent to you. The range that your house should sell in. And the second thing is you also need to look at, especially in today's market, the range that your house should list in. List price is just as important from a marketing perspective as your sale price, because oftentimes in today's market, buyers' expectations are that they need to pay more. So you might see in your market, and all of it's market driven. Where are you? What location? What neighborhood? If you're in a neighborhood that every house listed for $320 and sold for $400, you may not want to go on the market at $410 hoping to get $400 because every house is listed at $320 got $400. If you're in a neighborhood where every house goes on the market at $410 and sells for $400, pay attention to those ranges and pay particular attention to those ranges as you get closer to actively going on the market. By establishing an initial financial plan, you now will be able to do a net sheet. A net sheet is, how much is it going to cost me to sell? How much is my agent charging me? How much am I going to pay in commissions? Am I going to need legal fees? What's it going to cost me approximately to update a search and survey? Are there any inspections, county health department inspections, that sort of thing that I need to do? Any transfer taxes that I need to pay? Any compliance fees, sump pump inspections, things like that? And then how much do I need to pay off my mortgage? That will start the whole process rolling, because after that's done, you'll know, if you decide to move, how much money you can expect to put in your pocket. It's not a guarantee, but it's an expectation. And from there, you can get the ball rolling, because you now know, okay, if my house sells for $400 and I have 20 or 30 in closing cost, and that's $370, and my mortgage is $82,000, I'm going to have about $88,000 or something to go forward with. And then that becomes your down payment towards the next step of your life. And that can be into another house. That can be into a retirement home. That can be just putting it into savings and renting, or putting it into the stock market, or wherever you want to invest it. But that financial plan is the basis you need to start with before you do anything. Step number 2 is what I call process, which is when you're doing your financial plan and you're meeting with the agent, you should ask the agent, what's their selling process? What can I expect to happen when and if I hire you? And a good agent should be able to within 15 to 30 minutes, take you through a bullet point process that they follow that will help you to get the most money for your house. Number one, figure out your finances. Number two, what's the process? And number three, the most important step, decide you want to move. Now, moving, what's interesting is whenever anybody moves, I always say there's a mental process to that. And I liken it a little bit to people who were expecting. I remember years ago when my children were being born, as we were preparing for the baby to arrive, we got the room prepared. And if we found out if it was a boy or girl, knew in advance, we would buy items that were appropriate. So when the baby came home from the hospital, it was ready. A lot of times when people are starting to think about moving, they kind of go through a process. One, I'm uncomfortable here. I'm thinking about moving. I'm thinking about leaving this space. Is it my house is too small? My house is too big. It's more than I want to maintain. I'm uncomfortable here. That can start 2-3 years before you consider moving. Then usually people will start app scrolling. I'm uncomfortable here. 6 months later, all of a sudden they see an open house sign. They Zillow app or Realtor.com or Homes.com or local real estate broker site, or they stop in at an open house. They're reading on their iPad or Kindle or whatever they use, laptop, and they start looking at things. So you start, first, I'm uncomfortable. Then you start looking at what may be more comfortable. Then there's kind of 3, which is I'm looking, but I'm not moving, where you actually start to actually look at stuff and get a little more serious. Then step 4 is I'm really uncomfortable. I want to make a commitment to move. And when you're ready is put the sign up. I'm sick of this place. And that process should kind of happen. And one of the reasons I say step 1 is financial and step 2 is process, because as you start to go to step 3, which is deciding you want to move, before you enter the process, if you get the right agent partner, you should make them partner as soon as you're ready to move. And when I say partner, you should hire them. Even if you're not going to go, if you want to go on the market in February and you've got a price and you know you're moving and you know you're going on the market in February, it may not be a bad idea to have an early listing agreement with your agent, because you want them to become a consultative partner in the process, which I'm going to take you through right now. So whenever anybody's thinking about selling, now that you've made your financial plan, you've talked to an agent, gotten your process, you've decided, I'm not happy here, I want to sell this house. The next step in the process should be decide, are you going to hire an agent? If you're going to hire an agent, pick one and retain them. After you've done that, go through what I call the plan, stage, and prepare. Let's say you've decided in December you're going to go on the market February 1st. If you've made a commitment to an agent, come up with your financial plan, you've decided you want the sign to go on the ground, the biggest step you can make is plan, stage, and prepare. The day that you go on the market, the house should be eat off the floor clean. Clutter should be removed. You shouldn't have dirty dishes in the sink. And the biggest item, which creates the most stress in the closing processes, is things in your home that you are not taking with you. Get rid of them before you sell the house. Things in your home that you're taking with you but you do not use, pack them and place them in an organized fashion, either in the basement, in the garage, in the house, or get a storage location. The only thing that should be being actively used in your house, if you're going to maximize your price, this isn't that you have to do it. You can put a house on the market with stuff everywhere and clothes on the bed and the bed's unmade. But if you're going to try to get your showing the most results in your showings and the best success, you should do the things you're going to have to do anyways when you move, which is look in your closets and go through the things that you don't wear anymore and donate them, throw them out, or sell them. If they're not going with you to the next house, all they're going to do is create additional stress after a buyer buys the house, and you have to get it all out in 60 days anyways. Take the time after you've made a commitment to moving and before you're actively on the market to take advantage of those 30 to 60 day windows and remove the items that are no longer going to be part of your life. Now, I had a client the other day I went and visited, and I think he listens to this podcast, so he'll recognize this. And he said to me, I really appreciated something you said. And I can't even know, I'm not sure I said it. So I'm not sure I want to take 100% credit. It might've been something that we said, discussed. Maybe he even brought it up. But I was talking about how I had moved. And when I moved, I started to remove things. We kind of knew 9 months before we were going to move. And we started to remove things from our property to make it easy. And I remember going through things in my house, like that had memories that were good memories. I remember going through my hockey jerseys. I used to play a lot of beer league hockey, and I got jerseys from Everly's teams. And I've always kind of fancied myself, oh, one day I'm going to go pick up the skates and start playing beer league hockey again. So you keep all these jerseys. Eventually I got to the point like, I'm not going to go do that. So I had to throw them out. And the client actually said, oh, I remember you said, if it's really that much of a memory and you're not really going to take it with you, just take a picture of it. Just take a picture on your phone. If it's something you're not going to ever use again and you just want to look at it for the memory, take a picture of it and then donate it. Somebody else could use it, get rid of it. It's hard to do, but it's a good idea to do that before you've sold the house. So once you've got that, I'm comfortable, I'm ready to go stage, pick an agent, hire them, prepare, stage, and prep the house. That may mean over 30 days, you've prepared, removed, boxed, staged, have your agent over to review, listen to their recommendations. After that, it's a little bit decluttered. Take a look. Are there areas of the house you can touch up, make better? I'm a big believer that if you're not flipping the house, don't go put a brand new kitchen in. But if you can do things with your own hands that don't cost you a lot of money to help you make more money, it's always a good idea. Once plan, stage, and prep is on, you're going to pick a start date. You're going to go on the market. That date might be, let's use February again. We're going to go on the market February 1st. Day one, before you go on the market, your big day is going to be your presentation day, and that's when your photography is being done. Everything in today's world in marketing a home is about how you present on the internet. So you want to have a good presentation on the internet. So as you head into the market, imagine your house is going into this world of buyers instantly. It's going to hit their phone. They're going to open their phone, and they are going to hit, I like it, or it's gone. So the presentation day is when your professional you hired is handling the presentation of the house. Pictures, video, 3D tour, Zillow tour, floor plans, drones, whatever that agent you've decided to hire is promising you is a very important day. When presentation day is coming up, do not have 3 dogs in the living room, the cat litter boxes in the master bedroom and the basement and the bathroom, and the clutter all pulled up and stacked. Remember that professional agent you've hired is going to be preparing the presentation, or if you're doing it yourself, preparing it so that that's what the buyers are going to decide on. That first 7 photos, click, 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 gone or in. So have your house prepared. That's why it's always good. Hire your agent, prepare before presentation day, have them over again. Hey, do you think we're ready to go? Thumbs up, let's go. Photo day. The day before you're going to go on the market, finalize your pricing strategy. If you hired an agent in December, you're not going on the market till January 10th. It does not mean that you can't change your mind on the pricing strategy. Markets change every day in real estate. Markets change every day, and you need to be attuned to that. So it may not be the same fluctuation. Well, maybe in some ways it is. If you look at the stock market and you have a stock, and let's say you have a Ford stock and you see that you bought it at $10.50 a share and it provides a good dividend, and you see one day it goes up to $11.25 and then a month later it drops to $9.50 and then it goes up to $11.50. Real estate market fluctuates that way. In the long term, it doesn't fluctuate by $20,000, $30,000 in a day, but it still fluctuates a little bit. And the strategy you take when you enter the market needs to be attuned to that day. So when you're going on the market, talk to your agent about how's the market looked recently. Is there anything I need to do to adjust? Are we asking too much? Or are we asking too little? The other thing I want you to prepare for is when you go on the market is if you're presented well and you have a good professional agent on your side, and you hit your marketing marks, you are going to get what the house is worth. However, I like to compare the sales price of what you're going to sell a house for to being, you hire the agent and the agent's doing the best job they can, and you as a seller have done everything the agent's advised. And if you hit the market and you don't sell, it can just be a bad day. A good analogy will be, you can be Bill Belichick in his prime with the New England Patriots, coaching the GOAT, coaching the best quarterback there is. And you go out and play the Buffalo Bills in an early season game and you get routed. I think Drew Bledsoe, and when he first came to Buffalo, did it like one game. But that doesn't mean that the agent's bad or your house is bad. It just means that the didn't react that day. So you can go in the right way. You can do everything the right way, but it doesn't mean the market's going to agree with you or your agent. The market's going to tell you real quick when you hit the market if you've hit it at the right price and with the right strategy and right presentation. And sometimes it may be a matter of if you pick the right strategy, you should end up getting, sales quickly. But I've seen the right strategy, slow first weekend, second weekend, 5 offers. I just saw that last month. Saw a house at the market. We had two showings previous week. We thought we had the right pricing strategy. We started to get worried midweek, the next week. All of a sudden, on Friday, we got another offer. Saturday, we got 2 more. Sunday, we got 3 more. And we ended up selling it for well over list price. It just we had a bad week the first week. We coached it well. We presented well. The seller did everything they're supposed to do as a team, but they had a bad week. A couple things didn't go their way. There was a couple bounces, bad weather, or something like that. So just be prepared, though. When you enter the market with your pricing strategy, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a guarantee you're going to get that price or higher or lower. That all gets discovered once you're out in the market. Maybe the better analogy would be you're producing a Broadway play and you do everything you can to make sure that it's the best show ever. They all don't make it. They all don't hit. No matter how good your agent, no matter how good you are as a seller, no matter how well your house presents, the market always doesn't reflect what you believe. And if it doesn't, it's really important once you hit that market to adjust your strategy. If you want to sell, because remember the big decision up to 3, you want to sell, you're uncomfortable. So decide on the pricing strategy. I always say it's the Goldilocks theory, right? Your price can be too hot, too cold, just right. Every seller's got a different belief. Some sellers want to ask high and let the market knock them down. Some sellers want to hit right around where they think it's going to sell, and that's what their expectation is. Other sellers will choose a too hot price, as I call it, a very low price, and generate multiple offers because they know they're below market. That is a personality and that is a partnership agreement between you and your agent. From a strategy perspective, none of them are necessarily wrong. Some are more right for the time than others, but you can adjust that. So now you've got your presentation, you've got the market strategy, then you go active. I say go live, go active, hit the multiple listing system. And what's that mean to you as a seller? So when you hit a multiple listing system, what that means is that your home has been entered into a computer network of about, right now in Western New York, it's about 2,600 agents, give or take. And all of those agents can open their computer screen any day and they get searches for properties in their markets. So if you're in Amherst, New York, and an agent in Amherst watches everything hits the market in Amherst, and we put you on the market, that day, the moment that agent opens up their desktop, your house shows up as a new listing to them. And a good agent will be watching that regularly. Furthermore, what occurs with that in the multiple listing system, if there's an agent in the multiple listing system in those 2,600 that has a buyer that they're working with, they often enter in what's called the One Home Portal, which is a direct notification to buyers the moment your house hits the multiple listing system. So that's why presentation is so important. When you hit the market, you want to present right. You want to make sure your description's in there and your photos are there. Oftentimes I'll run into sellers that will say, "Oh, I'd like it to go on the market, but we'll do the photos later." Bad idea. Or I'd like to go on the market and I don't want to show it for 2 weeks. Bad idea. Or I'd like only to do 2 photos and we'll go on the market, and then later in the week, I'll clean my house out, and then you can take the rest of the photos, and then later on. Bad idea. First impressions count in real estate. You don't want the buyers to eliminate the house. Otherwise, you need to regenerate those buyers later on. Or it's what I consider a wave strategy. Marketing in real estate's like waves hitting a beach. Right now, you're quiet. There's nothing going on. The beach is here. The wave comes in. You hit the market. All of a sudden, everybody in the world sees it. And then in about 3 days, they stop seeing it again. Goes back out into the ocean. Doesn't mean you can't generate a second wave, but it's harder the second time around. So make a good first impression. So after it hits the multiple listing system, it'll go to agents who will then go send direct text and emails out to their buyers. It'll then feed out to any websites that are connected to that multiple listing system. That's what they call IDX, Internet Data Exchange. So oftentimes you'll list with Century 21. And if you're listed with me, I say, okay, IDX, take it. So that other competing companies that I compete with every day, will then present your house. And you might say, well, why on earth do you do that? Because the more views, the more clicks, the more people to see your house, the better exposure, the better the presentation. Matching is the better exposure. The more showings equals higher price. Good showings. So I want your listing, and you should want your house when you're selling it. It's the secret sauce to real estate. Oftentimes I had somebody last week say, could you do just like a pocket listing where we don't tell anybody, we don't put a sign up, and you just bring people to us? Sure, but it's not in your best interest as a seller of a property. It is not in your best interest not to tell everybody in the world it's for sale. And I know sometimes people are like, I don't want my neighbor George to know, he loves us. Well, guess what? The moment you hit the multiple listing system, if your agent's doing the right job, it's going to feed out to Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Homes.com, and about 850 other websites. And it's going to be presented beautifully with photos and drone and location and neighborhood and a floor plan and a good 3D tour. And they might even have a video to supplement that presentation. A good agent wants you to have your house exposed to the world. The more exposure with a good presentation, the better the chance you get your best price. So it goes the MLS to agents, to their buyers, to websites, particularly local websites, competitive local websites, other brokers that are not your broker. Their website takes it and they present it. Any buyer that's signed up with those websites, they get the instant notification when that website takes the feed. From there, it goes out to national sites, Century 21, Remax, ERA. Then you get the major players in the portal market, Redfin, Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, Trulia, the big sites, the ones that people have downloaded their apps. And in our market, for example, Zillow right now is a leader. Homes.com and Realtor.com are second and third. I think Homes.com is one to watch if you're a buyer. They're doing pretty nice things with that website and they're moving up. Zillow in the portal wars has been the leader for a while because they've got a super convenient app. If you, as a buyer, great app to use. Homes.com app is nice. Realtor.com app, tons of buyers on those apps. So as part of your selling process, your agent better have a plan to hit the MLS, hit agents right, get it to buyers, get it to the local websites, submit it to the local websites, get it to those buyers, get it to the national site, get it to those buyers, get it out on all the apps with the right photos, right presentation, and you've already prepared for this because you spent a little time decluttering and having your house spotless. Then you need a showing plan. So you and your agent need to devise what's going to happen next when somebody wants to show the house. I always say, be ready for short notices, deal with the headaches. Buyers don't recognize the headaches it takes when you're selling a house. So when you're selling a house and you get up, normally on your normal day, you get up in the morning, you might take a shower, go in the kitchen, have a cup of coffee, maybe have something to eat. You have to leave for work, so you put the dish in the sink. The shower still has soap on the thing and maybe a washcloth laying around, and there's a towel that you throw on the dirty clothes basket. The bed you don't make, you'll deal with that when you get home from work. When you're selling a house, you may get up at 8:30. You're going for work to work, or you may get up 6:30 going to work at 7:30, maybe a little more, and you have no showings for the day. And you might have a dog. You take your dog out for the walk, you put him back. You get notified at 9:30 for showing at 11. You don't have time to leave work, get back, clean the house, make the beds, get it all prepared. And you want to show the house. So when you're a seller, when you're preparing, also prepare kind of an emergency plan. Some of the tips I give sellers often, like when I sold my first house, I had 3 children, I think between the ages of like 5 and 13 at the time. And we did a bin system where we took everything in the room that they regularly used, and there was a bin there. If we got a notice at 11 for showing at 12, everything in the room went into the bin, got sealed, got set up neatly in the basement, 1, 2, 3, right in a row. And the showing was over. We could pull the bin back out for the kids to use. When we were done in the morning and we had the cup of coffee and took the shower, all beds were made, pillows were propped up, it looked staged, blankets were folded on the couch, and the house was as clean as it ever had been for the window that we needed to show that house. So that's one of the things you want to discuss with an agent is you can make some choices in your timing for selling a house, meaning you can choose to price it on a 30 to 60 day market time, which is a higher price time point, Or you can choose to put it on the market on a 3 or 4 day price point, which is a lower price point. It is very, very stressful when that sign's in the yard and you're at home at 8 o'clock and somebody pulls in your driveway to get the phone number off the sign, or they want to see it the next morning at 9. I'll never forget. I remember once I had, at the time I sold the house, this was probably 2010-ish, had a call on a Saturday night at like 9 o'clock to show the house on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And we had 3 younger kids, 2 dogs. The house was a bit messed up that Saturday evening. So my wife and I spent till like 2 in the morning getting everything pristine. We got the dogs and the kids in the car. We left the house at 8:30, and at 5 to 9, we had the cancellation. So be aware as a seller, there's going to be some frustration, but also be aware if you want to get the maximum dollar, it's worth it. Deal with it. Prepare and deal with it. If you are willing to take less money and you want to leave stuff all over the house, you go ahead. But my advice is try to deal with the pain. The reward is worth it. Before you leave the house, when you're going to be showing it, turn on the lights. Turn on all of them. Agents showing the house should be showing the house with their buyers. It's very frustrating as an agent when you walk into a house and the sun's not shining the right way and it's hard to see a room or a closet. It's hard to get into the basement. It's dark and the agent's fumbling with lights and they're turning on things like ceiling fans and they're turning on outdoor lights and they don't know your light switches like you do. So before you leave the house, turn on all the lights, brighten the place. Leave. Don't stay in your house when it's being shown. You're not helping. So a buyer, when they are looking at a house, fundamentally needs to feel comfortable. And they need to know that it's going to be theirs. And there are several things that can happen when a seller hangs around the house directly. One is a seller will feel the need to point out everything that he or she feels the buyer is missing, but the seller doesn't know the buyer. So you can get some people that want to point out everything about the furnace and the hot water tank and look at the circuit board. I upgraded it. It's a 220 amp service and here's the main line. And oh, wait, don't miss this flooring. And every buyer has something that's important to them. And many times the mechanicals aren't it. So if you're pointing something out that's mechanical to somebody, it may just confuse them and make them feel uncomfortable. It may make them question, why is the seller pointing this out? Let the agent show the house to the buyer. The second thing a buyer likes to sometimes do is visualize themselves in a house. And having I've had this happen, having a seller with the TV dinner and the newspaper on and the TV on in the living room doesn't make a buyer feel comfortable to look at the living room. A buyer is not comfortable if you are in your shorts and a t-shirt, eating a hot dog with mustard on your t-shirt in the living room, having a smoke and a cup of coffee or a beer, watching TV, hanging out in your living room with you. I've given you an extreme example, but I've had similar scenarios, right? They're not comfortable if there's 2 people sleeping in one of the bedrooms and you can't open the door. Had that happen before. They're not comfortable if your dog is jumping all over them. There are some buyers, believe it or not, don't like dogs. There are other buyers, don't like cats. Try to get your imprint of what's important to you out of the house and let the buyers put the imprint of what's important to them into the house. Every buyer has a different feel for what's important to them in a home, and it's not yours. My another historical story, when I was a younger agent, much younger, 25, 26 years old, there was a house that was kind of a split level, and it was designed in like the Netherlands. It had these little, it's a white with a pink and like flower porches, and the windows were all designed like you kind of picture it as one of those waterfront properties in the Netherlands. And I thought it was really tacky. And a guy called and asked about the house. And I said, oh, that tacky one? And he said, really? I love that. I learned a very valuable lesson at that point in time. It's not my house. I'm not buying it. Some people like, remember when you drive by that house and you go, oh my God, who would do that to that house? Well, the guy that lives there loves that. And by the way, there's probably a buyer out there that will love that too. It may not be you, but it's for somebody. Okay? Everybody's tastes are different. And having you being in the house does not help because you're inherently going to judge the agent and that buyer by your taste. It's really hard to do. It's why realtors, really good ones, don't judge anyone as to how they live or what they have. Right. And by the way, if you don't clean your house and your dogs are there and you got your litter boxes out, I still sell those houses. Oftentimes, though, people that have their dogs there and litter boxes out are the ones that buy the house. Before offers arrive, now you're in the process a little bit. Okay, you're on the market. Things are starting to show. You're dealing with the headaches of coming and going. It's a lot of activity. You should be communicating regularly with the agent, listening to the market's feedback. What is the market telling you? Is a wind whistling? There's no showings. It could be price. It could be timing. It could be weather. Have a conversation with your agent about it. If you're getting a lot of showings and you're not getting offers, nobody's getting off the fence, communicate with your agent about it. Maybe there's a different thing you need to do. Maybe it's a price adjustment. Maybe there's something going on that's just creating that hesitation that you guys can fix. If it is getting a ton of activity and there's offers coming in, which is what you hope, time to establish your rules of what you're going to do when you're going to negotiate. And sellers have 3 or 4 different options they have. They can listen to offers as they come. They can set a deadline, artificial deadline in advance, or they can wait and set a deadline later on. That's an in-depth conversation, almost an entire podcast in itself. You want to establish whether or not you're going to accept offers from buyers that allow them to do an escalation clause versus a highest and best offer scenario. That's assuming you get multiple offers. And you want to talk to your agent about all those different options and establish what you're comfortable with as far as your rules go. That will give you and your agent a clear message to send out to other buyers. When the offers come in, you and your agent should review them and pick one. Once you've accepted an offer, you're going to want to sign the contract. And then from that point forward, the job's not over. Contract sign is only the beginning of the job. So once the contract's signed, now you've got to go from contract being signed to 60 days closing. Now, if you remember way at the beginning, I told you the process is prepare, hire an agent early and prepare. And the reason I tell you that is because the day you get that offer and you accept one, so let's say you decided to go on the market February 1st, you get an offer and you've taken it. It's February 1st. The closing date on that contract, at least in Erie County, Buffalo, New York, is usually going to be April 1st, 60 days. Now, you got 60 days to get out of that house, get everything packed, and to leave that house as clean as possible. That means no stuff, no extra paint cans, no extra wood in the rafters. All the stuff you inherited from the previous guy doesn't automatically stay. Contract calls for it to be broom clean, and only the property that's attached should say, at least in Erie County, Buffalo, New York market. So once you sign the contract, here are kind of the quick next steps. 1, goes to an attorney. Pick an attorney, a good real estate attorney in this region. That attorney will review and approve the contract. There's usually conditions. There's usually an argument between the attorneys, which is not nasty. One attorney will say, hey, you guys missed this checkbox. Usually gets answered, not a problem. There might be an attorney that says, I don't agree with this. I don't like the way this has been presented. I want this phraseology changed. You need to get through that first 3-day window. The majority of transactions, if they are going to fall through, they're going to fall through in the first 5 to 7 days when the buyer gets cold feet. So offers made, you accept it. You sign a contract, pick an attorney. It goes to the attorney. Once it goes to the attorney, we have to get through that attorney approval process and get both attorneys to agree. Once both those attorneys have agreed, if you've agreed on a home inspection, the buyer will have it's usually about a 3.5-hour home inspection on a 2,000 square foot house. It's shorter on smaller ones, longer on bigger ones, but they're pretty thorough. If you have a home inspection in your contract, that's usually within 5 days after attorney approval, and they'll go top to bottom. They'll go roof, attic, insulation, chimney, second floor, first floor, basement, all electrical outlets, all appliances, all utilities. Look in the furnace, look at the hot water tank, look at the circuit board, take the circuit board panel off, look at all that thing. If that inspection is acceptable to the buyer, they sign off on that. If there's a problem with the inspection, the buyer either cancels the contract or raises objections in writing to you, and you have an opportunity to make a decision whether or not you want to accept those objections and correct them. If you get past contract, attorney's okay in inspections, then the deposit comes in. The deposit is when the buyer writes a check, which is a good faith earnest money deposit, saying, I'm sincere about buying this house. Here's $10,000 that your agent and brokerage will hold in escrow. They will hold it as surety in case they back out. Now, if they back out for a reason of bad faith, then it becomes an argument or discussion between the attorneys whether or not there's any liquidated damages, whether or not there's any reason for damages. If the buyer has a problem and it's in good faith, the mortgage company denies it or something else, then more than likely the deposit will be returned to the buyer. Deposit arrives. At that point, usually your attorney will reach out to you and say, I need a copy of your title search. I need a copy of your tax receipts. I need a copy of your survey. And I need you to check with the municipality to make sure there's no compliance certificates required. Many of the municipalities in this area will have a sump pump inspection or a drainage inspection to make sure water's not being drained into the sewer lines. There are county health inspections if you have well or a septic. Your attorney will ask you to provide those or to get those started, while they will order the search and the survey. In Western New York, when you get an offer, the buyer offers you 6 things. What's the price? What's the deposit? How are they getting the money? When are they going to close? Are there any inspections? What's else? What's included? And close date. So I could say 7 things. And then you as a seller, in return for them bringing the money to the closing, are giving them a title search, which shows that the history of the ownership of the property since 1920 and that the title is clear today or at closing. A survey, which is a picture. If you looked at the overhead, it's not like a picture, but it's a piece of paper with a line drawn, shows where the house is on the lot, shows that sheds and fences and things like that are on your property, not on your neighbor's property. They'll provide you the deed, which you recorded at Erie County Hall, showing that you're the owner, or you provide them the deed, signed deed. You provide them compliance certificates that the house meets any of the local compliances needed to transfer a property, and health department inspections of septic and well. If you have public water, you don't have to worry about that. So once the attorney's got that documentation, the buyer simultaneously is applying for their mortgage. When they apply for their mortgage, the only thing you as a seller need to worry about is how is the house going to appraise. So let's say the borrower is borrowing 80%. You sold the house for $400,000. The bank will send an appraiser out anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks after the house is sold. That appraiser will need to schedule an appointment, and the day of the appraisal, have the house ready. Appraisers also really appreciate it if you have an old survey, if you leave it out on the table. And that way they can get some dimensions and things like that without having to go to public records. It just makes their job a little easier. They have to do a little less rolling, a little less work. And once that appraisal's done and the bank has reviewed and underwriting all the buyer's documents, a mortgage commitment will come in. And the mortgage commitment is a written document that says to both you as the seller and to the buyer, they are definitely buying it now. Before you accept an offer, there's what's called a pre-approval. But the bank hasn't added the component of your house, and they haven't fully underwritten it with the location, with the most recent updates and all the things they need to do. Once they've issued that commitment, though, it's pretty clear they're closing the house. Greater than, in my region, once you've got the deposit, past the deposit and attorney approval and inspection, it's greater than 98% of the houses that are going to close. It's very rare that we have a problem with the mortgage. It is not so rare that we run into a problem with appraisal. So your agent and you, if there's an issue with the appraisal, it's usually pretty clearly defined by the lender. And that can be discussed at that time. Typical problem with an appraisal is it comes in undervalue. Or maybe more typical in this market will be, because our market doesn't fluctuate a great deal. I mean, most appraisals come in at value, if not a little higher. But a lot of times, the appraiser may find things that don't quite meet the standards necessary for the mortgage, such as missing handrails on a deck, peeling paint, no pressure relief valve on a hot water tank, exposed electrical outwiring in the attic or the basement, some things that are easily solvable. And often the buyer will ask you to do that. If the appraisal comes in at undervalue, it doesn't mean it's going to stay there. So don't panic. Usually both brokers involved, the buyer's agent and the seller's agent, should make a proactive effort to show why the buyer paid that to the lender. And then the lender can also forward that to the appraisal company, who will do a review. You don't always win reviews, but there's reviews available. Once you're past that step as a seller, it is time to clean, and move. Once that commitment's in, you're closing. Barring a last minute act of God, the buyer loses their job, some disaster occurs. Then at that point, it's time to start getting the heck out of Dodge or getting prepared to move. Sometimes you'll be selling and moving from your house to another house pretty much the same day. And if you're doing that, what I always say is box everything up from all the periphery rooms, move them down into one main area, get everything in a position so that your mover can come in on closing day at 9 a.m, get everything out there by 11:30. You have your mover drive to your new house. You pay them a couple hours to park, buy them lunch. And then you go to you're closing at 12:30. You go to the new house at 1 o'clock. You get the keys. You even move your mover there and there. The house at closing always presents better for the final walkthrough for the buyer when you have it very organized and neat, and there'll be no panic from the buyer, because it does. I've been to walkthroughs that have been, the day before the closing, and it hadn't looked like the seller moved a thing. And that is really disconcerting, because the seller who hasn't done anything in 60 days has 24 hours to get everything out of their house and to leave it in broom clean condition. And nobody appreciates getting a dirty oven, a dirty refrigerator, extra crap left in the basement in the garage. So as a seller, I recommend, if you want your transaction to go smoothly, try to do unto others as you would like done to you. So try to keep your house in the best possible condition all the way through the closing. The buyer will do a final walkthrough, which is usually the day or two before the closing, just to make sure the house is in the same condition that they bought it. And then you go to the closing. There'll be a whole series of checks that the buyer's been told and a closing statement provided to you by your attorney that shows all your fees and expenses. The buyer will normally bring a check to pay off the balance of your mortgage. And then usually either it's a check directly to your attorney or a check to your attorney to pay off all your closing costs, realtors, search, survey, deed, transfer tax, and your agent, and then a check to you. Sometimes, at least in Western New York, and don't panic, sometimes you'll go sign your closing documents Thursday morning for a closing Friday at 1. Your attorney will go to the closing Friday at 1 and get one check made out to them. And then they will issue the discharge, more money to the mortgage company, and then pay all the vendors and also write you a check. And that sometimes will mean, if you're buying another house, it doesn't happen that way, because you need to sometimes take proceeds to the next. But if you're not buying another house right away, sometimes it might mean that you close on a Thursday and your attorney will have your personal check available to you on Monday. That's just so that they can do get all the distributions in the individual checks. It's just easier for the buyer to bring one check than to have break up bank checks and all that other stuff. But you can make with your attorney arrangements for how you're going to get the proceeds from the house well in advance of the closing based on your expectations and his. It's always a good idea to have a conversation. And then after it's closed and you've moved, you get to move on to the next steps of your life. And the last step you should always, if you've worked with an agent that you're really pleased with, ask them where they'd prefer you to give them a good review. Many agents are hired based on the review of the job they did. So if you are particularly really happy with the agent, take a couple seconds and go to one of the websites they prefer. Ask them where, because many of the agents will. For example, at Century 21, we send out a survey. Century 21 rates us. We get a grade every year. We have to meet certain standards in order to get certain recognition. And so there'll be a survey that's sent out like two weeks after a closing. And I always say to my clients, honestly, there's nothing more appreciated than after going through this entire process with somebody, from preparation and prepared in December to on the market in February to closing it in mid-April. It is consistent communication between you and the seller, and you become very close with the seller. It's really appreciated when that person that you become close with has moved on to North Carolina or wherever, and takes a couple seconds and says, "Hey, my agent did a great job. Let me tell you some things that I thought made them special," and tell other consumers, because it helps the agent to get other business. So I hope I almost could break this into 3 different podcasts, but make a financial plan, follow the process, just ask your agent what their process is, decide when you want to move, put the sign up, get it prepared, do paperwork, plan, present, decide on your pricing strategy, go on the market, show it, get activity, get contracts, and have an agent follow through with those contracts step by step by step by step by step. That's what you can expect when you sell a house. As always, I really appreciate you watching or listening to this podcast. Please share it with your friends. Thanks so much. See you later. Thank you so much for tuning in to You Own It. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on your favorite podcast apps, and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and greatest. All of our social channels are clickable in the show notes as well. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, c21jerry.com. There you'll find more info on me as well as my latest listings for all of Western New York. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, through any big decision, you own it.